Hi guys, Miss Davis here, back for day 25 of the Anne Frank series. And so I've got quite a bit I want to cover today, so I'm just going to try to get right into it pretty quickly. I only want to preface it by saying we've been talking recently about sort of the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of life. How, you're riding high 1 minute and Anne is, in love and thinking about spring, and that as long as there's nature and she can't ever be unhappy. And then the next day she's like down in the dumps and just feeling miserable. And so that more of that continues because that's life. Sometimes we get disappointed because we're thinking, oh my gosh, like bad days in a row and this is never going to be over. But if you really look at it, everybody kind of goes up and down um, from day to day, and that's sort of normal. Today's a mixture of some highs and some lows, some good news, some bad news. So with that being said, I'm going to jump right into it today. Starting with Friday, March 17th, 1944. Dear Kitty, a sigh of relief has gone through the secret annex. Kraler has been exempted from digging by the court. Ely has given her nose a talking to and has strictly forbidden it to be a nuisance to her today. So everything is all right again, except that Margot and I are getting a bit tired of our parents. Don't misunderstand me. I can get on well with Mummy at the moment, as you know. I still love Daddy just as much, and Margot loves Daddy and Mummy, but when you are as old as we are, you do want to decide just a few things for yourself. You want to be independent sometimes. If I go upstairs and I'm asked what I'm going to do, I'm not allowed to salt my food. Every evening regularly at 8:15, Mummy asks whether I ought not to start undressing. Every book I read must be inspected. I must admit that they're not at all strict, and I'm allowed to read nearly everything, and yet we are both sick of all the remarks, plus all the questionings that go on the whole day long. Something else, especially about me, that doesn't please them. I don't feel like giving lots of kisses anymore, and I think fancy nicknames are terribly affected. In short, I really like to be rid of them for a while. Margot said last evening, I think it's awfully annoying, the way they ask if you've got a headache, or whether you don't feel well, if you happen to give a sigh and put your hand to your head. It's a great blow to us both suddenly to realize how little remains of the confidence and harmony that we used to have at home. And it's largely due to the fact that we're all skew with here. By this I mean that we're treated as children over outward things, and we are much older than most girls of our age inwardly. Although I'm only 14, I know quite well what I want. I know who's right and who is wrong. I have my opinions, my own ideas and principles, and although it may sound pretty mad from an adolescent, I feel more of a person than a child. I feel quite independent of anyone. I know that I can discuss things and argue better than Mummy. I know I'm not so prejudiced and I don't exaggerate so much. I'm more precise and adroit because of this. Well, you may laugh. I feel superior to her over a great many things. If I love anyone, above all, I must have admiration for them. Admiration and respect. Everything would be all right if only I had Peter, for I do admire him in many ways. He is such a nice, good-looking boy. Yours, Anne. Okay, so that first journal entry, I'm feeling her today. I am so feeling her. Listen, I have 3 kids. And I love them to death. I love them to pieces, but they are driving me up the wall. And I am like, guys, go do this. Guys, I know I'm being bossy because I'm like, go do something, go clean your room, go do a chore, go outside, do something. And my kids are, about of this adolescent age, and we are just on each other's nerves during this coronavirus quarantine thing. It is like 4 weeks now that we've been relegated to our home and to our lawn, and my God, am I feeling her? And I know my kids must feel the same way. Like, mom is treating me like a baby, and I'm not a baby. I know they're not, but man, are you on my nerves, kids? I'm feeling Anne Frank today. I don't, for what it's worth. I don't know if your family situations are kind of the same, but oh dear, give your parents a break. Okay. Next journal entry, Sunday, the 19th of March, 1944. Dear Kitty, yesterday was a great day for me. I had decided to talk things out with Peter. Just as we were going to sit down to supper, I whispered to him, Are you going to the shore to do shorthand this evening, Peter. No, was his reply. Then I'd just like to talk to you later. He agreed, and after the dishes were done, I stood by the window in his parents' room for a while for the look of things, but it wasn't long before I went to Peter. He was standing on the left side of the open window. I went and stood on the right side, and we talked. It was much easier to talk beside the open window in semi-darkness than in bright light, and I believe Peter felt the same. We told each other so much, so very, very much that I can't repeat it all. But it was lovely, the most wonderful evening I have ever had in the secret annex. I will just tell you briefly of the various things we talked about. First, we talked about the quarrels and how I regard them quite differently now, and then about the estrangement between us and our parents. I told Peter about Mommy and Daddy and Margot and about myself. At one moment he asked, I suppose you always give each other a good night kiss, don't you? One, dozens. Why, don't you? No, I've hardly ever kissed anyone. Not even on your birthday? Oh, yeah, I have then. We talked about how we neither of us confide in our parents and how his parents would have loved to have his confidence, but that he didn't wish it. How I cry my heart out in bed and he goes up into the loft and swears. How Margot and I only really know each other well for a little while, but that even so we don't tell each other everything because we're always together, over every imaginable thing. Oh, he was just as I thought. Then we talked about 1942, how different we were then. We just don't recognize ourselves as the same people anymore. How we simply couldn't bear each other in the beginning. He thought I was much too talkative and unruly, and I soon came to the conclusion that I had no time for him. I couldn't understand why he didn't flirt with me, but now I'm glad. He also mentioned how much he isolated himself from us all. I said that there was not much difference between my noise and his silence. That I love peace and quiet too, and have nothing for myself alone except my diary. How glad he is that my parents have children here, and that I'm glad he is here. That I understand his reserve now and his relationship with his parents, and how I would love to be able to help him. You always do help me, he said. How? I asked, very surprised. Well, by your cheerfulness. That was certainly the loveliest thing he said. It was wonderful. He must have grown to love me as a friend, and that's enough for the time being. I'm so grateful and happy I just can't find the words. I must apologize, Kitty, that my style is not up to standard today. I have just written down what came into my head. I have the feeling now that Peter and I share a secret. If he looks at me with those eyes, that laugh and wink, then it's just as if a little light goes on inside me. I hope it will remain like this, that we may have many, many more glorious times together. Your grateful, happy Anne. So I have noticed this is the first time she has ended any journal entry with anything other than yours, Anne. Your grateful, happy Anne is how she ends this one. And she's just really, it's like, again, like I talked about at the beginning of the video. There's highs and lows, and sometimes she's just like ecstatic and couldn't be any happier. And, even in these really humble times, just to, really feel like she's connecting with another person, having somebody to talk to, and, to be honest and forthright and get to know each other. That a lot of happiness can come from that, from a genuine, honest conversation where there's no ulterior motive and there's no anything else in the way of it. Like, no relationshipy stuff, just honestly friends talking about things that they think and how much they've grown up. And I think it's interesting that Anne's not the only one who realizes that she's a totally different person now in 1944 than she was in 1942. And, when you're a young person and you're a teenager, 2 years is kind of like a lifetime. You grow so much, even in the span of like a year or half a year. So, and I think last time we talked about this, we talked about, are you a different person now than you were, say, like 6 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, since, everything that you were used to doing and all the routines that you were used to doing got like stripped away all of a sudden. Do you feel any different now? In a lot of ways, I do. I've been working really hard to try to reinvent myself, to, still do what I do and do what I love to do, but in a completely different way. And I don't have a feeling that I can't be alone in that. I mean, other people must be doing similar things. So I'd be interested to hear what everybody else feels different about now, since we've been doing this whole thing. coronavirus quarantine thing. The last journal entry, nope, maybe I got two more. Monday the 20th of March, 1944. Dear Kitty, this morning Peter asked me if I would come again one evening and said that I really didn't disturb him, and if there's room for one, then there's room for two. I said that I couldn't come every evening because they wouldn't like it downstairs, but he thought that I needn't let that bother me. Then I said I would love to come one Saturday evening and especially asked him to warn me when there was a moon. We'll go downstairs, he answered, and look at the moon from there. In the meantime, a little shadow has fallen on my happiness. I've thought about it for a long time, that Margot liked Peter quite a lot too. How much she loves him I don't know, but I think it's wretched. I must cause her terrible pain each time I'm with Peter, and the funny part of it is that she hardly shows it. I know quite well that I'd be desperately jealous, but Margot only says that I need not pity her. I think it's so rotten that you should be the odd one out, I added. I'm used to that, she answered, somewhat bitterly. I don't dare tell Peter this yet. Perhaps later on. But we've got to talk about so many other things first. I had a little ticking off yesterday evening from Mummy, which I certainly deserved. I mustn't overdo my indifference towards her. So in spite of everything, I must try once again to be friendly and keep my conversations to myself. Even Pim is different lately. He's trying not to treat me such as a child, and it makes him much too cool. We'll see what comes of that. Enough for now. I'm full to the brim with Peter, and can do nothing but look at him. Oh, excuse me. Evidence of Margot's goodness, I received this today, and it's a letter written from her sister, dated March 20th, 1944. Dear Anne, when I said yesterday that I was not jealous of you, I was only 50% honest. It's like this. I'm jealous of neither you nor Peter. I only feel a bit sorry that I haven't found anyone yet, and I'm not likely to for the time being, with whom I can discuss my thoughts and feelings. But I should not grudge it to you for that reason. One misses enough here anyway, things that other people just take for granted. On the other hand, I know for certain that I would never have got so far with Peter anyway, because I have the feeling that if I wished to discuss a lot with anyone, I should want to be on rather intimate terms with him. I wouldn't want to have the feeling that he understood me through and through without my having to say much, but for the reason that it would have to be someone whom I felt was my superior intellectually, and that's not the case with Peter. But I can imagine it being so with you and Peter. You're not doing me out of anything, which is my due. Do not reproach yourself in the least on my account. You and Peter can only gain by the friendship. So that's what Margot wrote to her, and then Anne has a reply that she wrote back, my reply. Dear Margot, I thought your letter was exceptionally sweet, but I still don't feel quite happy about it, nor do I think I shall. At present there is no question of such confidence as you have in mind between Peter and myself. But in the twilight beside an open window, you can say more to each other than in brilliant sunshine. Also, it's easier to whisper your feelings than to trumpet them forth out loud. I believe that you are beginning to feel a kind of sisterly affection for Peter, and that you would love to help him just as much as I. Perhaps you will still be able to do that sometime, although it's not the kind of confidence we have in mind. I think it must come from both sides, and I believe that's the reason why Daddy and I have never got so far. Let's not talk about it any more, but if you still want anything, please write to me about it, because I can say what I mean much better on paper. You don't know how much I admire you, and I only hope that I yet may acquire some of the goodness that you and Daddy have, because now I don't see much difference between you and Daddy in that sense. Yours, Anne. So this is an interesting little exchange of letters between sisters. Basically, Anne thinks that maybe she stepped on her sister's toes because maybe her sister liked Peter too, but Margot's like, So I think it's nice that they kind of get everything out in the open, and it does ring true to Anne's personality that they write letters back and forth to each other rather than talk, because she seems to be so much better on paper, which is another reason for people to keep a journal. Sometimes it's easier to say your real thoughts and true feelings when you have to slow down enough to write them out. So once again, I think I'll end this little video session with, if you have not started your journal yet, what are you waiting for? See you tomorrow.